Did the Big D get abducted?
Oh, yes, he did.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
It's a go, Gene. Take them down.
Each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you like selling movies we have covered, will cover, want to choose one for yourself, please visit chatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with a number of wipes each movie takes to get off your respective butts. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, and our YouTube channel, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing tonight?
All right, people, listen up. We don't have time for second takes, so pay attention. Welcome to another Shat mission. You're here because you love 80s action, explosions, and questionable military tactics. If you're looking for realism, Gene, you better turn around to go down the airstrip. If you're looking for motorcycles with rocket launchers and Chuck Norris ziplining into battles with an Uzi and terrorists so bad at hiding, they might as well wear name tags, Gene, then saddle up. Because we're here to break it down. We got no Kevlars, no backup plans, just pure action and chaos. So let's go to work, Gene. Let's crack open a cold bud and celebrate freedom with Frank Falls' 6th Commission, the 1986 American fuck yeah action film, The Delta Force.
Big D's been drinking vodka.
I have. I'm just high on freedom, Gene.
Well, Frank, we've been waiting a long time to do this movie, and thank you so much for writing in and calling in. Frank said that he left his message, watched the movie again. The theme song is so badass. The runway escape, the damn motorcycle. God bless America. One welled-up tear, and then that theme song as they take off at the end of the movie. Lee Marvin, Chuck Norris, -5 wipes.
Yes, and people out there who don't know the legendary Frank Falls, like I said, this is he's done 6. Rad, Near Dark, Tango and Cash, Face Off, The Delta Force, and upcoming Pure Country. The man is a legend, and I think we deserve for people to hear Frank in all of his glory tell us why Delta Force just makes him feel patriotic and say, fuck yeah.
All right, it's Delta Force time. This is actually chapter 2 of Rad. Crew Jones says, screw it, mama. I'm not taking the SAT. I'm taking the ASVAB. I'm joining the Delta Force. So my bicycle's got missiles. I know my bicycle when I was a kid. After I ran Hell Track, I had Chuck Norris's motorcycle in this movie, and I shot rockets at everything. I know this is not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but if you want to, just fast forward to an hour and 31 minutes when they start taking hostages. Listen to that theme song. It's almost as good as Thunder in Your Heart, maybe even better. If you got low T or ED, listen to it. Instant fix. Man, when Pete passes away at the end, I don't want to be a spoiler. Oh, man, Chuck Norris is one tear welling up in his eye. That's a love of a friend. I know this one's not going to be for everybody, but this is a good one. I've seen it 50, 70, 100 times. Time I'm feeling down about myself, I put this one on. Listen to the theme song. Look forward to seeing what you think. I had 0 wipes for me, but I'll say I'll probably give it a 3. I don't know, 2.5. Just listen to the theme song. Watch the end. Watch that motorcycle. Watch those rockets. America.
Frank, I don't think you need to sugarcoat it here. I don't want to be friends with anybody who this is not their cup of tea.
There was a time, Big D, in the early days of my friendship with Roger Roper, when U.S. soccer was everything to us. And he would dress up as George Washington and I would dress up as Abraham Lincoln, and anything we can get our hands on that had fucking stars and stripes or an eagle on it, anything like that, we were 100% about it. It was that over-top, rah-rah American pride. And we did it so innocently, not knowing what future years would hold for us and what an ugly turn that could take. But man, Frank takes me back to those feelings. You know, we talk about being nostalgic for the 80s. This made me nostalgic for, 2014.
Yeah, I got the warm and fuzzies, Gene. I can't wait to deploy. Let's start this off, buddy.
Delta Force is a 1986 action film starring Chuck Norris and Lee Marvin as leaders of an elite special forces squad based on the U.S. Army Delta Force unit. Directed, co-written, and co-produced by Menahem Golan, it is the first installment in the Delta Force film series. 2 sequels were produced, Delta Force 2, The Colombian Connection, and the direct-to-video Delta Force 3, The Killing Game. This film, The Delta Force, was inspired by the hijacking of TWA Flight 847. The Delta Force and I go way back. My cousin Pej moved to the U.S. as a refugee in 1985. I was 5 years old. He was 17, which meant that my big cousin could go to the video store and rent whatever he wanted. And we watched the greats, Big D, Charles Bronson, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and most of all, Chuck Norris. Admittedly, The Delta Force was not my favorite Chuck Norris movie at the time. I was an odd kid. I was more of a missing in action kid. So I was excited to see how I would evaluate The Delta Force as an adult, and maybe it would shift to my favorite Chuck Norris movie.
So, Gene, as I've grown older, I'm glad the time period I grew up. I got to see the birth of the computer. I got to see technology really change the world around us. The music in the 80s and 90s was great, even in the late 70s. The movies were iconic and remembered some 40 years later. That's why we have a podcast. But this genre, it shaped me. Growing up, movies like Rambo and this film had to have more than a subtle impact on my life that led me to join the military. I did a video, which I searched for today, on the family's handheld video recorder at one of the local middle schools around us that had an extensive jungle gym and apparatus. And Vinnie Wallace and I got into our fatigues that we bought downtown in Mamaroneck at Sergeant Pepper's Army Surplus. We went out there and had my father shoot it as if it was a covert, quote, Delta Force training facility. We ran each other through all of the different monkey bars and all of the different activities, low crawl. Looking back now, man, that was probably embarrassing, but these type of films, they were like catnip to a 12-year-old patriotic American boy who wanted to grow up, Gene. I wanted to free hostages. I wanted to make the world safe. I wanted to crack open a cold Budweiser at the end of a mission on the plane, going home, knowing we made a difference, Gene. And these movies, they shaped me, and I hope you can hear it in my voice, Frank. I'm feeling all warm and fuzzy, just like I'm wrapping myself in the American flag.
All right, rock, flag, and eagle. Let's hit the trailer.
America's elite anti-terrorist commandos. Their only mission, to neutralize the enemy. Starring Chuck Norris.
Sleep tight, sucker.
And Lee Marvin. The Delta Force.
This is a hijack! Heads down! This is a hand grenade!
Because the stakes are more than pride.
Daddy! Heads down!
More than honor.
Please, no!
More than justice.
Collect all passports.
Why?
Good!
Because they're fighting to save American lives.
No!
You take one of us, you gotta take us all. It's a new age of terror that requires a new breed of warrior. The Delta Force.
1 minute to showtime.
We're members of Delta Force and we're here to take you home.
Delta Force. Starring Chuck Norris and Lee Marvin.
American, I want to negotiate. Do you hear me, American?
Loud and clear.
America's new heroes, the Delta Force.
In 1980, Operation Eagle Claw is aborted after a helicopter crash, with the U.S. Delta Force evacuating to their C-130 transport plane. Among them is Captain Scott McCoy, who rescues his wounded comrade Peterson from the burning helicopter before the team finally evacuates. McCoy expresses his disgust for the politicians and the military hierarchy that forced the mission to launch despite the risks, and announces his resignation.
So we're going back to 1980. You mentioned, Gene, that this is based on a real-world episode, a tragic event when the United States Special Forces tried to rescue some of the hostages in Iran. It went horribly wrong, much like the basic setup of what we see in the opening act of this film. But it was much more dramatic and less campy. But it's real world. They're trying to tie into it. It's odd to think if 5 years after September 11th, they did a film like this to memorialize the attacks on the World Trade Center. I don't know if people would be mortified or somewhat honored, maybe, that their family members who sacrificed were brought up. That aside, if you came to this movie at all looking for military accuracy, you're in the wrong place, Gene. The movie starts off and it's making wild choices. Lee Marvin, he struts out there flamboyantly with a camouflage scarf. Later on, he's got an all black, button up, some kind of custom fatigues. He lets 3 or 4 buttons down the chest go. This dude, he's out there looking like he should have been cast in the birdcage. Chuck Norris is wearing sleeveless camo, like a tank top. He's out there. It's like a flexing contest. The entire Delta Force team, all of their outfits and uniforms and gear looks like it's brand new. This is the first day of shooting. Everything is crisp and clean. Then we start meeting other characters and players in here. We get to Beirut, the terrorists. That looks like you went to Halloween Spirit and you said, give me the terrorist outfit. You need a priest? Give me the priest outfit. Everything is a little bit off. The American flags, Gene, I don't know if you know this. I know you were a military man yourself. The American flag in this film is shown as it is portrayed on an image, where you have the stars and stripes on the left, and on a uniform, it goes reversed. The stars and stripe go up into the top right, as if you were holding a flag running into battle. The way it's displayed on these guys, you're running away, you're retreating. These little inconsistencies made me smile and laugh. 12-year-old Big D, I was all in, but today I'm like, all right, don't take it serious.
I was surprised at how subversively sexual the Delta Force is. It was in ways that I did not remember as a kid, probably because I was 5 years old and didn't know what sexuality was. Chuck Norris, as you mentioned, that uniform, it's a bit tighter than it needs to be. Nothing really fits quite right. There's a topless little girl, sweaty nuns, and then we get the rare shirtless terrorist, which made me feel a lot better about my body. Representation matters, Big D. Seeing a terrorist up there, Persian or not, it worked out for me. But that was the key indicator to me that this sexuality was intentional, because there was no reason for this to happen. For those of you who haven't seen this movie, like the head terrorist, he has on a suit with a dress shirt on underneath. He's got some sailors and he wants to bind them. So he takes off his jacket, he takes off his dress shirt, he takes off his undershirt, he cuts it into strips, and then uses that to bind them. What the hell was that all about?
Yeah, Gene, it's about being sexy.
Yeah.
You gotta have a cause and be sexy. But Gene, you're talking about these terrorists. You should be subtle normally if you want to hijack a plane. Abdul and his boys, they are not subtle. You mentioned Abdul is played by Robert Foster. He looks like a Miami Vice villain. He shows up to the airport in that white suit with the red pocket square. They are not subtle in any way. You should have pegged these guys at the airport immediately. Hint, if you're going to also be the third member of the team and you get caught while you're checking in with your standby ticket, don't cause a scene. Just say, okay, I'm sorry, and walk away. But these guys, maybe it's their first hijacking.
Yeah, while we're giving out hijacking advice too, if you're at the back of the aircraft and you are armed, calmly and quietly make your way to the front of the aircraft before you reveal that you are carrying weapons like a grenade or a gun. This was the 80s. You probably could have been like, can I see the cockpit? And they would just let you the fuck in. They gave kids like little wings back then.
100%. They used to let you smoke, Gene. Emma even got in JFK into the cockpit.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I mean, we weren't in the air, but they still put her in the cockpit with the engines running. It was still a little bit dangerous.
Big D, you mentioned military accuracy in the Delta Force. They really give people a warped view of what rank means in the military and the types of jobs that officers do. In real life, officers in the military above like first lieutenant, they're generally not in the shit, right? They're not like going to Beirut to take down terrorists. But movies like the Delta Force, cartoons like G.I. Joe, right? They've got captains and majors and even a colonel flying out on covert strikes when in reality, let's give credit where credit is due. Most of this work is being done by the enlisted. And this shit got really silly in the Delta Force. Colonel Nick Alexander, he's like the head of the Delta Force, okay? Like even McCoy reports up to him. That is a 61-year-old Lee Marvin. He looks about 81. This was his final film role. Like he did this movie and then a couple months later dropped dead. I don't know why they felt the need to insert him into this film.
Well, you had to because of his history. Lee Marvin he's a bad man. He was in the Dirty Dozen. He brings some gravitas to the role. He was in the Big Red One. He's an older guy, yes. And I will tell you, though, about the ranking. In the normal services, in the normal units, that is true. But when you get to special forces, the average enlisted is an E6, which is a staff sergeant. And the average officer is like an O3 as a captain, because you have to have ranked up in order to get there. And then they want to pay these guys well. But no, you would not have this old ass. He's got the wild eyebrows, the leathery skin, and he's rocking this uniform that screams he wants to go to Miami and the clubs and not go into Beirut searching for terrorists.
5 years later, Lebanese terrorists hijack a Boeing 707 flying from Cairo to New York City, taking all 144 passengers and crew hostage. The New World Revolutionary Organization, led by two terrorists named Abdul Rafai and Mustafa, force Captain Roger Campbell and his crew to fly to Beirut, where they make demands to the United States government. The terrorists segregate the Jewish passengers and a priest and transport them to a militant-controlled area of Beirut, while a dozen additional henchmen are brought on board. So this flight, Big D, it's like the fucking United Colors of Benetton. You've got American Jews, Israeli Jews, Russians who live in Chicago with Jewish-sounding names who aren't Jews. You got priests. You got nuns. You got kids. You got old people. You got moms. You got dads. You got a German flight attendant. I understand the point here, international flight, and the whole world is represented in this story. But I've never seen so much representation with a need to explain everybody's backstory. Like the movie really wants you to know that these are different kinds of people. And I'm a pretty agreeable person. Like I'm not rude to people in public, but I don't want to talk to anyone on my flight. These people are telling each other their life stories. Pardon the pun, but the movie is Delta forcing it.
No, exactly. And you understand, they're trying to make them sympathetic.
Yes.
Trying to make all of these different groups find somebody that they can see themselves in and be like, oh, what do I do here? And like later on, films will try to make war less black and white. Saving Private Ryan. You can kind of understand what the Germans are doing. No one's in war is always good or bad. It's shades of gray. But here they go way too far. They don't develop anyone outside of Chuck Norris's character the way that they even the interim scene where they're waiting before they get on the plane. We see a lot of familiar faces, and I liked it. Yes, it's corny. Yes, the movie's long, but I was there for it. When we meet Lane Kazan from my Big Fat Greek Wedding, and she's playing an American tourist, she looks relatively the same. I thought maybe, I texted you, is this a prequel to My Big Fat Greek Wedding? There's Robert Forster. Is an American actor playing a Middle Eastern terrorist. Fine, that's an 80s thing. You have George Kennedy from Cool Hand Luke and airport disaster movies. He shows up as Father O'Malley it is great. You have Shelley Winters, who looks like she's physically struggling. She's like, oh, my back. And I thought really that was Shelley Winters screaming that she was hurting. This woman spanned decades, a legendary career, Poseidon Adventure. She worked all the way up until the 90s. This is a low budget canon film, but they got some of the cast in here that's well above what they should have had.
Well, yeah, man. You got Golan and you got Globus running the show.
Awesome.
It's going to be special. It's going to be a canon film. These two cousins, for those who aren't familiar, Menahem Golan and Yoron Globus, they are the powerhouse between. If you saw a fucking ninja movie in the 80s, like a tough guy movie, a military movie, that you're like, whoa, that's a lot, it was probably these two. Mm-hmm. And as you might have guessed by their names, they are Israeli. And I think nowhere in their catalog is their pro-Israel sentiment as strong as it is in Delta Force. This movie, it's like a salute to Israel. We have the echoes of the Holocaust. We have heroic depictions of Israeli army intelligence. They say Israel is America's best friend in the Middle East. And yet we also get this oddly nuanced representation of terrorists. Like, that was the part that shocked me. I expected to be pro-Israel, but we also get in these terrorists their goals, why they're upset with the United States, their conflicted humanity. Yes, they're terrorists, but they still have children. They still have respect for a pregnant lady. They don't want to hurt the Christians, just the Jews.
No, and they do get a little heavy-handed, though. When the Holocaust survivor, you see his tattoos, he's walking down the aisle, and they're like, is no one going to say anything? We can't let this happen again, as he walks through the curtain.
And don't forget the German flight attendant who's like, don't make me do it. I can't do it. You don't understand. I'm German.
Exactly.
This is 1986 in the United States. I guarantee you that some people did not understand.
No, and man, the Golan and Globus and the Canon Group, iconic film genes, Masters of the Universe. Cobra, I don't know how we haven't done it. Over the Top, we've done it. The Delta Force tonight, Cyborg, King Solomon's Mine, we did. You can go down. There's about 40 films. Break-In, I think we have coming up. The American Ninja, hopefully. The Death Wish films. These guys at the time must have been like the joke of Hollywood, but you go back now, and these films are more memorable than some of the things the big studios were putting out.
The flight departs for Algiers, where the terrorists release the female hostages and children. Meanwhile, the Delta Force, led by Colonel Nick Alexander and a recalled to duty and newly promoted to Major McCoy, are deployed to resolve the crisis. With women and children hostages evacuated, the Delta Force launched their assault, only to discover too late that there are additional hijackers on board. When the Delta Force blow their cover, Abdul kills a U.S. Navy diver named Tom Hale. He then forces the pilots to return to Beirut and takes the remaining male passengers with him. So Big D, I was only a cadet in Air Force Junior ROTC. Forgive me if I don't understand how Army works. Is it normal for a guy to retire from that Delta Force in 1980 in disgust, apparently spend 5 years in a barn eating mac and cheese, showing up in civilian clothes, screeching into the hangar, hopping on the plane, and then getting an on-the-spot promotion from captain to major?
First of all, he shows up, and they're waiting for him.
Yeah, the whole mission.
There's like a hijacking, and they're like, he's going to show up. Did you call him? Yeah, I tried to call him. No answer. Let's just wait here a little bit. He shows up, and the other generals are like, who the hell is this guy? They've already packed his gear. That's not how it works. He hasn't been processed. He hasn't signed the paperwork. If he dies in theater, no one's getting any money, but it doesn't matter. It's because he is such a badass. And I kept asking myself, would it have been too hard to get a military expert on set? Was that something that only happened like in the late 90s and the 2000s? If you had some expert with real world experience, because modern films, they always get a veteran or special forces or somebody who's at least skilled in tactics to make it look believable. Look at John Wick. I think we've talked about it before. The training that went in, how serious he took it. So he is believable. In the 80s, it was as if they just didn't even care. Yes, okay. The Canon films, they don't want to spend the money. That initial helicopter looked like a jungle gym fire truck that they had disguised as a helicopter so they couldn't like blow it up. But these dudes, nothing is real. The guys don't have Kevlars. There's no body armor. There's no night vision that anyone uses except for momentarily. The dudes are running around with an Uzi, shooting it with one hand. Okay, every decision that this movie made was like, let's look cool instead of let's make sense. Is it fun? Yes. But dude, this movie is not serious. So when he shows up and parks his Ford Bronco and gets into the plane with Petey, I'm like, fuck yes, let's do it.
And did I miss something? Did they ever explain like why he had a change of heart about the military? Like he retired because he was disgusted with the military and the government.
Yeah.
And then 5 years go by and he's just like, oh, okay.
There was a weird connection with him and Petey.
Yeah.
And Petey, maybe he's going to protect Petey.
Oh.
Maybe there was some, because I joked with you. There's a porn.
Spoiler alert. He fails.
Well, hey, I didn't even do it. Frank Falls, he's the one who spoiled it about Petey's demise. But there is a vibe in it. I texted you. It was like a porn parody.
Yeah.
Any of these scenes could have easily ended in someone's death as much as it could have in sex. It easily could have been either way. You get what you get. Chuck, he's back on the wagon. Scott, he's now a major. He's getting on the plane. He's got no gear. And this man is a danger to everyone in this film. He's more dangerous, I think, to the friendly side of the forces, everybody in that plane, than he is to the terrorists. He's running around with his finger on the trigger the entire movie. He waves it at teammates on the plane, civilians, anyone in sight, real special forces. They would kick this man's ass. He would be gone. He would not be part of a team. But in the 80s, nobody noticed or paid attention to what gun safety would be, or muzzle awareness. But they wanted us to believe that Chuck Norris, he was an elite operator, but he's out there with an Uzi. He's sliding down ropes. He looks like he's never held a gun before. His strength is fighting. He is in martial arts. That should have been his hand-to-hand specialty, but yet they only use it at the end a little bit. I wish he had spent some time becoming as proficient with weapons as he is kicking people in the head.
I absolutely felt that, Big D. When I saw Chuck Norris actually go hand to hand, I was like, oh, this is why he's an action star. Like, this is why he's really good. And it reminded me of all the time I saw him in Bruce Lee movies and all the other movies that he started where he actually got to use that skill set. Shooting, not so much. And maybe he's not careful with that Uzi because an Uzi can't hit shit from like more than 50 yards, right? I was surprised with how outgunned the Americans were in this movie. This is supposed to be the Delta Force. This should have access to the most elite weapons possible, the most lethal fighting force in the world. The terrorists are out there with AK-47s. They got 30 cals on Jeeps. The Delta Force, they're firing back with like submachine guns that fire 9mm rounds with questionable accuracy.
And normally you have a team that consists of multiple weapon systems. So you'd have some that are great for up close, some at greater distances. If I saw these guys coming at me with a bunch of Uzis, I'm going to drop back with some of these rifles that are better at long range and just pick these guys off because they're not wearing body armor.
Oh my God, the car chase scene when the guys are firing their AKs into the van and it's just like cutting it up like Swiss cheese. I'm like, everything in that van would be absolutely dead. There is no way you survive that. Meanwhile, Chuck Norris hanging out of the side of a van with an Uzi. I don't know where he's keeping all those magazines because he's just ripping through ammunition, just killing everybody.
And for those who haven't seen it, the chase vehicles have mounted high-powered weapons on top that are mounted and are stable platforms, like a 50 cal. There's some kind of 7.62. It looks like it might have been an M60. They would have shredded that 1960s VW bus and Chuck and everybody else in it.
So I was at the range on Sunday, and I had to bring this up. I just started asking around, hey guys, Uzis, what do you think? Why were they in Delta Force? And my friend Scott turns around. He says, I know exactly why. Marketing. I said, marketing? The Uzi came out in like the 60s. Why would they be marketing in the 80s? And Big D, you might remember this because I certainly did not. That prior to, I think, 86, you could just go to the store and buy an Uzi. And I think in the 60s, you could have them mail order to your home. So, yeah, it actually made sense. Like, you got to move those guns. You could see a gun in the movies that the Delta Force is using and just go to the store and buy it.
I was a G.I. Joe fan. That's Snake Eyes' weapon of choice, besides his katana. So hell yes. Man, I wish I would have bought one back then. So it's great marketing.
What were you, 13, 12? Oh, you were busy you were in the movies back then.
I was. I wasn't making that sweet movie change, but I could still dream.
Well, upon returning to Beirut, the terrorists transport the passengers to a separate location while the pilots and 2 male flight attendants remain in the 707. Working with a sympathetic Greek Orthodox priest, Israeli Army intelligence prepares an operation to free the hostages. McCoy and Peterson enter into Lebanon disguised as a Canadian television crew. Once the hostages are located, Delta Force assaults the terrorist holdouts, freeing the hostages and evacuating them to the airport. They kill most of the militants, but Abdul gravely injures Peterson and flees. McCoy chases Abdul and engages him in a vicious hand-to-hand fight, breaking Abdul's arm. As the terrorist leader prepares to shoot McCoy, he is killed when McCoy launches a mortar into his car.
Got a moment of silence there for Peterson.
Pour one out.
I'm gonna take a sip for Peterson right now.
Same, right here.
That's our boy. I've been bagging pretty much on the friendly forces here. I got to now let's shift towards the terrorists because they're not exactly the best either. If you've seen Zero Dark 30, you know the time it took for the U.S. intelligence to track down bin Laden. Years of informants, years of putting together clues. He was constantly moving. He was using carriers. He was avoiding detection. The terrorists in this film, Gene, they're a little different. These dudes are out in public. They are parading hostages down the middle of the street, broad daylight, right next to a funeral procession. Their secret headquarters, I think the screen comes up. The title card says, like, terrorist headquarters, Beirut. This secret headquarters is literally surrounded by barbed wire. It's filled with armed guards on every level. They're looking exactly what, if there was an analyst who's like, let's look for a building that could be a terrorist hideout. This is it. They're not hiding. They're not trying to blend in. They might as well have like a neon sign that says bad guy base. This is every cliche you could imagine. It would have taken maybe 24 hours before this building was bombed. You didn't need to get Delta Force in the ground. The terrorists in the real world and extremists, if they acted like this, the world would be a much safer place.
It's almost like they didn't need that Greek Orthodox priest next door as a spy. Like, Big D, you and I could just show up in Beirut, drive around for about 10 minutes, maybe check Yelp, look up best terrorist headquarters, filter for 4 stars and up. There it is.
Just walk around. Everybody probably be talking about it. Like, hey, did you see those terrorists? Holy shit. They're parading them right down. They took over that building that used to be like a school. And the terrorists are really a problem.
Did you see them moving all those blindfolded people into the building by the beach where everyone is?
Yes, and everybody's in uniform. Everybody's out there. But man, this movie, you don't watch it for the realism. You're watching this for like the fuck yeah moments. The moments that make you like, yes. And Chuck Norris, I have to admit, he's not up there on my Mount Rushmore of fuck yeah moments. You got Schwarzenegger, you got Stallone, you got even Van Damme. But Chuck comes out. And I get that iconic moment where I had to fist pump the screen. I was like, yes. McCoy is stuck on the second floor. Lee Marvin says, get down here. So he's like, what do you want me to do? So unlike what a normal person would do, he grabs a rope with one hand. He slides down the rope, Uzi in the other, zip-lining straight into a gun battle, firing his Uzi, no recoil. This is pure Hollywood magic. He is spraying bullets mid-slide. Somehow he takes out multiple terrorists, Gene. And this scene is screaming 80s action. It's not real. It's not accurate. Chuck Norris doesn't look very believable in it. But I could hear the theme song kicking in. And that shit, Gene, it kicks in over and over again. And it just makes the movie fun. Realism's long gone. But Chuck Norris in this movie, he can do anything.
I thought you were going to go with the scene where Chuck looks out the window and he sees a terrorist. He's got a shot lined up with an RPG, and he's about to blast some heroic American soldiers. And Chuck looks down, kind of looks at the soldiers, looks down again, and I think he's got his Uzi in his hand. He's shown that he's pretty deadly with that thing. He's going to shoot the guy with the RPG. No. He decides to jump on top of him from the window and then turn that RPG around, use it on the bad guys.
He jumps out like a spider monkey.
He does.
It's as if he screamed, like he might have startled you more likely than kill you the way he jumps, and it's filmed in a way that's pretty funny.
Would you want him to like drop the people's elbow on the guy, or he's got to be careful? It was a big jump.
He's got a weapon. He's got like 20 feet of rope. Maybe make a noose or something. Why are they all carrying this rope around? Use it. They're not very tactically proficient. They're idiots, and it goes even further, Gene. So now we talk about they've had this raid, they've gotten the terrorist, and they're going to set up an ambush because they found out that there is going to be reinforcements coming. So Scott says, "Hey, everybody, get out of here. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to slow down the reinforcements." So Scott and Bobby, they're going to hold off what looks like probably 150, 200 men with armored personnel carriers. Everyone's got an automatic weapon. There's multiple crew carry weapons, like 50 cals up on them. They come around the corner, and instead of taking cover, like Saving Private Ryan, remember they made the sticky sock bombs and they put the sniper up in the tower? These two idiots stand in the street like 50 feet away, right next to each other with rocket launchers. They're looking directly at them. The terrorists are like, "Why'd you stop the convoy?" And they're like, "Look at those two idiots right there." There's no flanking positions, no backup weapons. These guys just have one shot each with a bazooka, and they hit it. They're like in Die Hard 2, shooting grenades into the open window of a plane. They hit them both. It takes a couple of guys, it blows up. In a couple seconds, it's over. They get onto their dune buggies and their motorcycles, and they take off. This is not how you do an ambush, but it works out for these guys.
These two are left behind to hold off the terrorists that are coming in response to the Delta Force attacking the school. I don't understand tactically why you would move your force to the place that just got hit already. They're in pursuit of the Delta Force. No. The Delta Force is coming to you.
Right.
And you have hostages.
Gene, it's even better. I just remembered. They booby-trapped the entire building.
Yeah.
After they blow up the two first Jeeps, they let all of the soldiers start to run to the building. Then as a spectacle, shock and awe, Chuck Norris sets off the bomb that blows the building up. How about we let Scott and Bobby lay in hiding? They're laying down. They wait for all of the bad guys to rush into the building. Then they blow the building up.
The entire reason terrorist groups take hostages is leverage. If you want to avoid, let's say, I don't know, the Delta Force mounting a full-scale assault on your compound, you take hostages. If you want to persuade a more powerful opponent like the United States military to agree to your terms, you take hostages. The New World Revolutionary Organization at this point has more than 100 hostages. They have wisely spread them across 3 locations and our communication with each other. So they got some at the school, they got some at HQ, they got some in the aircraft, okay? And at no point do they stop to tell the Delta Force, "Hey, if you keep attacking the school, we're going to kill everyone at the school, everyone at the headquarters, everyone on the aircraft." Instead, they forget the hostages entirely, and they just want to take on the Americans toe-to-toe.
Maybe they're just not good terrorists.
They're terrible terrorists.
When they're first refused landing, the one hostage takes off the armrest in the plane and beats the shit out of that sailor. Guess what? It worked. It let them land. They should have taken that. You shoot the one guy, drop him out the door, let him get run over, flash the peace sign, and move on. You kill a couple hostages, you show that you mean business. But this isn't a normal Delta Force, Gene. It gives off a vibe. Did you ever go to Disney's MGM Studios?
No.
Okay, so it's now I think called Disney Hollywood Studios, but it used to be MGM Studios. And they used to have in the back the Action Spectacular, where they would have a bunch of stunt cars come out. They'd go up on 2 wheels, explosions, boats jumping off ramps, and a bunch of souped up dune buggies. That is what this assault force is. It's an 80s action spectacular. They've got dune buggies. They've got motorcycles. It looks like the gang in Mad Max. They're jumping off ramps. They're flying through the air. They're doing unnecessary donuts and all kind of wheelie fights. And then on top of doing wheelies, Gene, they've got rocket launchers in the front. They've got rockets that shoot out what looks like the exhaust pipes. the dune buggies. You're out in sight. You got the lights on. This felt like a childhood wet dream of mine. We're like G.I. Joe. We're my G.I. Joe vehicles. That's what these vehicles look like. Dune buggies, motorcycles with sidecars that are like Gatling guns. This shit screamed like a live action G.I. Joe. And it's relentless. It's over the top. It is crazy. And Cannon Films, God, the chaos. I wish they were still around.
Yeah, they leaned way into the coolness of the vehicles. I was particularly fond of the way doing wheelies on the motorcycle made McCoy bulletproof. And the fact that they gave him not only, everyone remembers the front rockets on this thing, which like magically just restock themselves. Mm-hmm. Dual sport ass mortars. There were mortar tubes out of the back of that bike that he expertly targeted. But I was wondering how they got all the vehicles to shore, because you mentioned Saving Private Ryan. We get an amphibious assault scene. We see exactly how shit went down. In the Delta Force, we see McCoy. He's on shore. He signals the assault ship with Morse code. The door comes down. We see the Delta Force. They're slogging through the surf on foot, with all their gear. They get to shore, and there's just an entire car lot of Jeeps and buggies and motorcycles just waiting for them in the sand.
Yeah, I was wishing we'd seen, maybe even if it was just like a bad miniature, like of vehicles being sling loaded. Like you would have them being dropped off by Chinooks. But again, maybe it's some Israeli, like submarine or some kind of like what they call those things in Saving Private Ryan, the ones that drop the front door. They had some
amphibious assault vehicles.
Yeah, maybe the Israelis had them, but it's unimportant, Gene.
I mean, it'd be cool to see them.
That would be, but it would be expensive. You don't think they had the budget for that? But it's there, Gene. They got their rope on. They got their 2 locking carabiners. They've got their American flag and color on their shoulder. They're there for business, Gene.
With the hostages and rescue team secured, the team seizes Flight 5282, kills the terrorist guards, and saves the crew. Delta Force boards the 707 with all the hostages, taking off to Israel just as McCoy storms the runway on his motorcycle, managing to board after destroying several terrorist jeeps. Having confirmed the hostages are safe and en route home, Peterson says his farewells to McCoy before succumbing to his wounds. In Israel, the Boeing 707 lands safely, and the hostages are greeted by their families, while Delta Force disembarks with Peterson's body to their C-130.
I don't want to seem like I'm complaining here, but early on, the film had time to develop a relationship between the terrorist and a 6-year-old girl and a Cabbage Patch doll. You got to spend time for the terrorist to get extra pillows for a pregnant woman to keep her safe and to keep her comfortable. But yet the film didn't have time to think through basic things like, okay, our goal is to save terrorists. If we save them, how are we going to get them out? This is supposed to be an elite force. They're pretty detail-oriented. What happens? We're going to assume that we're going to be positive. You got to go in there with the mission. We're going to save them. Lee Marvin just casually, he goes, pilots. He goes, could you guys fly this to Israel? And he goes, yeah, of course. What happens, Gene, if he says no? What if he says the plane was damaged when we landed? What if he says, no, the terrorists took out the spark plugs or whatever they could take out of the plane to make it not work? Or they took out the fuel. What would have happened, Gene? There's no standby transport. There's no air support. There's no backup plan. In a movie that's so ridiculous, you couldn't have thought about how we're going to get these people out.
How quickly, Big D, we forget about the helicopter explosion during Operation Eagle Claw. They can't be extracted by air because those choppers are dangerous. No Delta Force guy is getting anywhere near a helicopter ever again.
So you think it was punishment?
No, I think that they were like, okay, we're going to get you out by chopper. And they said, no, thank you. We'll take our chances with the Boeing 707.
You couldn't get the Israelis to bring in some more doom buggies? Or maybe that was their plan to drive the doom buggies out. Who knows? It's ridiculous. But it goes.
Peterson was supposed to drive everybody out.
Oh, poor Peterson, man. I feel bad for poor Peterson. But Gene, it's not just the exit. The whole logistics of it, it's a little bit off for me. I went and did some math here. So at the end, there's this miraculous escape. They evade the vehicles trying to block the runway. They take off. And I'm like, all right, how far is it from Beirut to Israel? It's about a 45-minute flight. Yet somehow when this plane lands, there is a full welcome home party. You've got families, reporters, flags. There's a live band. And then Delta Force, this elite covert, they're a secret organization, Gene. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody knows. SEAL Team 6, nobody knew who they were at first. These dudes walk off in the middle of an entire press event with somebody who didn't make it home, Gene. After these dudes are sitting on the plane cracking a beer, and is it any beer? It is a Budweiser commercial. They're singing American patriotic songs. It is a great old time. Nobody's concerned, Gene, that something bad might have happened during this mission. They're having a great time. They're on the plane. They get out there. It's a lot of flag waving, and a movie that took time to build up the nuances of what is the definition of a terrorist and a patriot. At the end, it just turned into a giant Budweiser. I'm surprised the Clydesdales didn't come running out onto the tarmac, and Chuck Norris would have jumped on there with Petey's casket and made his way back home.
Now, Frank, we like to earn our money here on the podcast, and I know that you were grief-stricken over Peterson's death, so we should take a moment to really dive a little bit deeper into that. Big D opened the door. I'm running right through it. I know we shouldn't expect incredible writing from a movie called The Delta Force, okay? But someone did get paid for this script. And that someone has a name, and that name is James Brunner, who also wrote my beloved Missing in Action. So this man is a professional script writer, and we should expect better than what he gave us in this movie because it is hammy cliches. Take Peterson, for example, okay? Now, he nearly died in the helicopter crash at the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But then McCoy defies orders. No, McCoy, get over here. You get right back here. No, I can give a fuck. I'm going to get Peterson. So they establish these two. They're close. And then who goes with McCoy to do the Israel recon? It's Peterson. And they are the only characters who really discuss their lives outside of the mission. And that brings me to the movie trope that means you are a dead man. If you talk about what you're going to do after the mission, you are fucking going to die during this mission. Then they have Peterson split off to show that McCoy doesn't suck because had he been around, Peterson would have been fine, right? And it's just a matter of time before Peterson is shot. They cue the sad music, the brave farewell. We going home? Yeah, we're going home, Petey. It's so bad.
It's man, when he barely survived that opening scene, and I was like, oh, there's some connection here. And the action heats up, and I'm expecting Petey. At least let this man go out in a blaze of glory. Maybe a last stand. Maybe the plane is going to take off, and he sacrifices himself. Maybe he gets one of the big leaders. Something happens before he dies or makes it worth it. I don't think he even got shot. I don't think this was combat. This looked like a completely avoidable rollover. This looks like a traffic accident. That Petey got killed because of negligent driving. This wasn't like he got shot in the head and went down. This was a rollover that Petey then lost blood. They got him onto the plane. They almost tried to save him. I don't think he died in a memorable, patriotic way that would have made his death worth something.
I would have taken like a Willem Dafoe Platoon. He's on the runway.
He's on his knees.
They left him.
Yeah. Or you see the enemies circle up.
Yeah.
And they circle up on Petey, and you get Scott leaning out of the plane like Tom Cruise, screaming, "No!" That could have taken us into Delta Force Part 2, but instead, Petey fucking wear a seatbelt, Petey. If he was wearing a Kevlar, that man would have survived.
All right, now is the time of the podcast when we give our Shat score for the Delta Force. The Shat score is our way of telling you, the listener, how many wipes it would take to get this movie off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It's watching Chuck Norris finally to get to do some Tang Soo Do. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster movie. It's when you don't need beds because you're going to die tomorrow. Big D, I'll start with you. What is your Shat score for the Delta Force?
So, Gene, I'm not going to pretend like this movie should have won an award, even though the only nomination it got was for Exceptional Young Actress for Natalie Roth. I think that was the 6-year-old topless girl you mentioned with the cabbage patch.
She was 6?
I believe the character said she was 6.
Oh.
I believe that's her. But overall, man, this is a fun movie. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. It's over the top. But this leads to films later on. It paved the way for the Commandos, for the Rambos, the sequels, for the ridiculous, beefy, juiced up superhero action stars. Without this film to crack open the door, I don't necessarily think those other ones succeed. I know it doesn't deserve it, but it feels right. This was a fun summer movie. I think 2.5 wipes. I can't give it any worse than that. It's a campy action movie with the backdrop of real American tragedy. It's 2.5 wipes.
I wish I could agree with you, Big D. I had a lot of fun watching this movie. I had a lot of fun doing this pod with you, and I always have a lot of fun with Frank Falls, but this is not a good movie. And beyond that, we talked about how many mistakes they made in timing, in character development. Unforced errors, I think, would be what I would call this movie, because they have to give McCoy a promotion. Why? They had to make him retire. Why? You're answering questions that nobody was asking, and you're making the movie weaker for it. We didn't even get into the grenade scene and how like everybody was just chill about putting a pin back in a grenade. Like we all know how to do explosive ordnance disposal. Yeah. I'm surprised you weren't more personally offended by that, Big D. So I'm going to have to say this is about one of the worst movies I've seen while doing this podcast. I have to go 4.5 wipes.
That's travesty, Gene.
I'll accept that. 4.5 wipes from me, 2.5 wipes from Big D. That gives us an average wipe score of 3.5 wipes for the Delta Force.
Well, Gene,
okay, maybe 4.
3. Oh, you see you're thinking about it. No. Gene, listen to this.
Don't do it, Big D.
Gene, like Frank said, this could cure ED. Like this is better than Ozempic. This is like the magical drug. It makes hair grow, Gene, on men who have lost their hair. Your score is egregious with a score of 3.5 wipes. That now ties in the 316 spot with Nightmare on Elm Street, Dune, Karate Kid, Iron Eagle, another similar film, and Repo Man. I'm okay with that.
This is the Iron Eagle of Army movies.
It feels because Chappie, wasn't his name Chappie when he died?
Chappie.
That's Gene. It works.
God, that's all we needed was Peterson to leave a recording for McCoy.
Yes. Hey, listen, you know what? I know you're hurt, buddy, but you can keep going on. Thanks again for saving me. I'm glad you came back. Yeah, it'd be perfect. It works, Gene.
Frank, thank you so much for this return back to my 5-year-old self. I had a great time doing it. Big D, before we close out, we got some voicemail. And the first one's a very special one for me. It comes from Mike T from Upland calling in about Withnail and I.
My boys. This is Mike T from Upland. I want to thank you guys for a wonderful episode of Withnail and I. I just listened to it. I was playing catch up and I saw that it had happened. And I'm sorry I didn't call before and leave a message to introduce the movie, but man, you guys did a really great job. You just keep getting better and better. Yeah, it was really a treat. I'm so glad that Big D liked it as much as he did, and that Gene still loves it as much as he always did. Yeah, it was like introducing it to another friend and having them fall in love with it as much as we did, right, Gene?
Right.
Absolutely. Just, you captured everything right about it. You know, you didn't go overboard with the quotes, although it is just infinitely quotable. Just all the good stuff from Danny. Yeah, you guys really just nailed it to a wall, and I'm going to call that episode art. I called previously, too, about the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and you guys put me on the air. I'm getting a little greedy for airtime, but I'm just kidding. So bad. Yeah, I just got finished walking my dogs and finishing that episode, and man, perfect score, right in the pocket, right where it should be, in my estimation. I'm probably a one wiper for me, maybe even a percentage. But yeah, thank you both for just wonderful thoughts. Wonderful. I mean, you guys really just do a service to us movie podcast lovers. There's a few of them I listen to, and honestly, you guys are the most consistent and absolutely just the best. I don't know. I guess it's my Gen X mentality towards all these things, but I just love the conversations you have, not even concerning movies, just about your friendship and, all the other people in your lives, little ancillary characters. Yeah, thanks, guys. Have a great night. I look forward to the next one. You're doing great episodes. Peace.
Mike, I have so much to say about this one. Your Monty impersonation made my butthole pucker, so well done. This voicemail came in October of 2024, and this couldn't come at a better time. Big D was just on the road. He's such a good guy that he didn't let a snowstorm stop him from going to a wedding. He drove to that wedding. Okay, as a person who had a lot of people cancel my wedding because of like the slightest inconvenience, this is a good man. He did that. He came back. He was still ready to record this. I had an insanely busy day. I worked. We had all kinds of issues at work. I know, Big D, you're having issues at work as well. Got done with that. Had jujitsu. I had planned a motorcycle ride with the King Bee. Did that and wiped out. But we still make this podcast happen because it matters that much to us. And to hear your words and to know that we're doing something good that people appreciate, it couldn't come at a better time. It feels so good to hear it. And thank you so much.
Gene, that's because we are the Scott and Petey Peterson of podcasting. There is nothing that can stop us from a mission. You could have been retired 5 years. You're going to get in your Bronco, put down your mac and cheese, and you're going to go in. We're going to record. And Gene, just like you said, the winter storm, that is the first time that like Tallahassee and some of the beaches got like 5 inches of snow. We drove through the heart of it, through Atlanta, cars on the side of the road, up until it's called Highlands, North Carolina, up like over 4,000 feet. It was great to go. And luckily I had a co-pilot friend of mine with me. But yeah, and again, to come back, I wouldn't miss this, Frank and you. This has made my day.
Are you wearing a martial arts world shirt in honor of Chuck Norris?
Oh, I didn't even think of that. No, this is Emma. This is Emma's demo team.
What are they called?
I don't think they have a name. She's Tiger
Martial
team.
Arts World 5 Fitness Hunters Creek.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Oh, fuck yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike, for your voicemail. We got one more. This one comes from Max, who's calling in about Waterworld.
Hey, Shatters. My name is Max. I'm a long-haul trucker, and I'm a big fan of your podcast. It's gone through me through many a boring day on the interstate and long delays at truck stops. I'm a big movie nerd here and also a 90s kids, and y'all's show takes me back to watching these things on TV when I was a little one. I'm going to request one of my favorite films from 1995, and that was also one of my first exposures to female nudity. That 10-year-old me definitely didn't freeze frame on many, many times. Underrated and not perfect, but definitely not a bad film. And I would dare say actually a good one that was a victim of its own publicity before it even hit theaters. I am talking, of course, about Kevin Costner and Kevin Reynolds' box office bomb, Waterworld. I think Kevin, Jeannie Triplehorn, and Tina Majorino are amazing in it. Dennis Hopper is comically over the top, and some people have ragged on his performance, but I think it works. And totally implausible plot, but, who cares? The action sequences are mind-blowing, and what more do you want than Mad Max on the water? So I can't afford to commission an episode, so I'm begging y'all, please, please, please consider doing Waterworld. It would make me very, very happy, and I think it deserves your attention. Thank you so much for your creation. I love it. I will keep listening until the heat death of the universe or the ice caps melt and drown all of us. Take care, guys.
Big D, you mentioned like the action backlot at Disney. When I was a kid, I would go to the SeaWorld in California, and they had the Waterworld like action show, and it was the coolest. And I watched Waterworld, the movie, and it was the coolest. I don't know why this movie gets such a bad rap. And I don't want to do the episode right now in this Delta Force episode, but no shit, we should do Water. When this movie came out, they were like, it's so expensive, it's so huge, and it sucks so much. It does not suck so much. This is a great movie.
No, I think unfortunately, this is one of the cases, it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy where all the bad press made people believe they came into the theaters with that perception. It went over budget because they decided to film it on location out in the middle of the ocean. Do you know how expensive it is to build that fucking base or wherever they lived and to jump jet skis and to have all of these elaborate sets out in the middle of the open water? I would definitely want to do this. And you got Dennis Hopper, iconic.
Yeah.
And Jack Black is the smoke pilot.
Max, you also mentioned the nudity in Waterworld. And this is a rare one where we got butt nudity. Because most movies that we've done in the 80s and 90s, it was boobs. You don't get a lot of butts. And I got to say, butts have come a long way in film. You know that butt?
You act like you've seen it soon. I've not seen that butt recently, but...
Yeah, I mean, even then.
You could tell me Van Damme's ass wouldn't hold up. You remember that thing?
Oh, no, Van Damme's, I mean, that's a whole other animal.
You could crack a walnut with that thing.
I have.
Oh, it's beautiful.
We'll think of a plan to get Waterworld done. I would be happy to do a live stream fundraiser to get it on the boards there. So definitely. I'll think of something. We'll get back to you on that one, Max. But it's a great suggestion, and it's one that I think is long overdue. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gene, next week, we thought we were out. We submitted our paperwork. We resigned. We're out of the service. We can't take another mission, Gene. This was the hard one. Petey's death hit us hard. But we're going back to battle, Gene. A very different war, a very different story. It's just the end of the Gulf War, and there's 4 American soldiers deciding to steal a cache of Saddam Hussein's hidden gold. Led by a cynical sergeant major, 3 of the men are rescued by rebels, but a sergeant is captured and tortured by Iraqi intelligence. The Iraqi rebels beg for an American trio to help them fight against the impending arrival of Hussein's elite guards. The men agree to fight in return to help rescue their comrade. Commissioned by Dalen D. This came out in 1999. I remember it very well. I remember a lot of things about it that was a bit controversial. And I'm ready, Gene. I'm ready to pick up my rucksack and head back into battle.
If you loved The Three Amigos, you'll love this one.
I just thought. Would you say they have a plethora of piñatas, Mr. Hussein? Yes, Jefe.
All right. Well, thank you, Dalen, for commissioning our upcoming movie. Thank you, Frank Falls, for commissioning the Delta Force. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. You should follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. Email us, hosts@shatpod.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link or by commissioning your own movie. Find all the information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all the information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, or everywhere fine podcasts be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-host, Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next time for the following movie.
Are we shooting people or what?
Yeah, I can see a grain of sand in there.
I think this guy has a weapon!
1, 2, 3, 4. Music is high, and the spirits are soaring as these young... Did I just say soaring?
Sir, this scene is restricted, sir.
Get out of my way.
Sir, mayday, mayday, God dang it!
Good afternoon. What do you see here?
Bunkers, sir.
What do you see in those bunkers?
Stuff they stole from Kuwait.
I'm talking about millions in Kuwaiti bullion.
You mean them little cubes you put in hot water and make soup?
No, not the little cubes you put
It's milk.